What are the best business class flights in the world? Like, the ones that you want to make sure you save up those points for and jump on as soon as you can. I went through all the top ranking articles covering this topic, dumped the data into a spreadsheet, and ranked them. In today's video, we're covering 8 of the top business class products in the sky and how you can fly with them on points. Additionally, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I'm going to do my best to explain what we're seeing on the screen. But if you follow along on YouTube or our Spotify video exclusives, you can see the step-by-step tutorials as well. Let's jump right in. All right, first up on the list is Cathay Pacific. This is actually getting harder and harder to find flights between Hong Kong and the United States in Cathay Pacific. So what we're going to do today is find flights between Hong Kong and London where there tends to be quite a few more options for flying business class. So what you'll want to do is go to cathaypacific.com, search for one-way flights. When you want to redeem flight awards, go from Hong Kong to London, where you're going to find a lot more availability. I was striking out when I was searching for flights between Hong Kong and San Francisco, Vancouver, Los Angeles, but there was quite a bit for London, especially if you want to fly last minute, where they will mark when there is high seat availability. So let's book this about a week out and go ahead and search for flights. And that is how you can experience more than 14 hours in Cathay Pacific business class for only 65,000 points. Pretty much everything except for Chase will transfer over to Cathay Pacific. So if you have American Express points, Capital One, City, or Build points, you can move those points over to Cathay Pacific to book something like this. Next up, we have Etihad, which is part of the One World Alliance. So let's see if we can find this a little bit easier using American Airlines or British Airways. So the easiest way, I think, to find good business class availability on Etihad is to fly into Abu Dhabi. Let's search for American Airlines. Let's search from anywhere over to Abu Dhabi and sort by business class lowest to see what we can find. And here, it looks like there's not a lot of options to North America. If we wanted to search for North America into Asia, flying into Abu Dhabi, all of these are going to be from Toronto. So if you wanted to position to Toronto, that is one option. Or if you wanted to go from Europe, that could be an option as well. Where it's going to cost about 70,000 points if you wanted to fly from Toronto, or about 42.5 thousand points if you wanted to fly from somewhere in Europe over to Abu Dhabi. And when you hover over, you want to make sure that it's showing EY, the airline code, and that's how you know it's going to be operated by Etihad so that you can experience that business class flight. Let's say that we did want to take that Toronto option and we like this date of January 3rd. Let's see if we can find that. And remember, it's going to be on American Airlines. So we are going from Toronto to Abu Dhabi, one person, and we are searching for a date of January 3rd in case anybody wants to escape Canada in the dead of winter and head somewhere a little bit warmer like the Middle East. So we do confirm that this is operated by Etihad Airways, and it is 70,000 points in business class plus $51 in taxes and fees on American Airlines. So I know that American Airlines can often be a little bit difficult to obtain for a lot of people. Build is the only flexible points currency that'll transfer over to American Airlines. Chase, Amex, Capital One, and City do not transfer over there, but they do transfer to British Airways. So let's see if we can find something a little bit better with British Airways, where we want to go to. Click on book a flight with Avios once you're on the British Airways site, and we are going to do the exact same search from Toronto over to Abu Dhabi. Just search one way at a time. It's always easier to find flights if you book one ways separately. And we are going to do this on January 3rd. In business class flight. I always recommend searching for one adult at a time, and once you find one seat available, you can scale up from there. And unfortunately, there is no availability through British Airways. If you want to fly this Etihad flight, American Airlines is going to be your best bet, where it's going to cost 70,000 points to fly one way in business class. If you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel like you just jumped into the deep end of points and miles, don't worry. We offer a free Points and Miles 101 course for you to help you earn and redeem points for your first redemption. The course covers acronyms, credit score, and how to get free upgrades and more. Grab the free course at geobreezetravel.com/free course or check out the link in the description box. Up next, we have a couple of fan favorite business class products. One will make you feel like a movie star, and the other will fulfill all of your childhood dreams. Here's the play. Coming in at number 6, we have Eva Air. I want us to try to find a route from Chicago over to Taipei, because if you can get flights between Taipei to Sapporo, Japan, or Bali, Indonesia, or Chicago in the United States, then you get to experience the Hello Kitty plane, which is super fun. I've experienced this in economy, but I haven't experienced this in business class flight. So if you can get an EVA Air award flight that has the Hello Kitty livery, that makes the flight extra special. So let's see if we can find anything between Taipei and Chicago. The best way to book EVA Airways, or at least the cheapest with points, is going to be if we go through Air Canada, which is also a transfer partner with nearly every flexible points currency. Unfortunately, Air Canada does not have a handy calendar that we can use on their own site, so I like to use seats.aero for this as well, where we're going to explore Air Canada. If you want to pay $10 for the Pro version, then you can show extended availability from North America over to Asia, sort by business class lowest, and let's search for ORD to Taipei and see what we've got. So lucky day, there are some dates with availability, and it's only going to cost us 75,000 points to fly one way per person in business class nonstop from Chicago to Taipei, and it should be the Hello Kitty plane. So let's pick a date next summer, let's say July 17, 2024. What you're going to do next is go to aircanada.com. Always start with searching for one-way flights, book with Airplane Miles, search for Chicago to Taipei on the date that we found, which is July 17 for one adult, and click go. And here there is just one seat left on this particular flight, so it's 75,000 points plus 75 Canadian dollars on this EVA Air flight from Chicago over to Taipei. So if you want to experience EVA Air business class, highly recommend you position yourself over to Chicago, fly back and forth between Chicago and Taipei, unless you want to also experience routes to Sapporo or Bali, but that way you'll get to experience EVA Air business class with the Hello Kitty plane. Coming in at number 5, we have Emirates business class, and it can cost a lot of points to fly between the US all the way to Dubai if you want to experience Emirates business class. So a couple of the most popular routes that people actually fly are either from Newark over to Athens or JFK over to Milan, Italy, because Emirates operates those Fifth Freedom flights where you can experience Emirates business class without having to go all the way to Dubai. Seats.aero has a very convenient Emirates page as well, which is a little bit more convenient than using Emirates' own website. And so here we could search for Newark over to Athens if we wanted to go to Greece, and we can search for business class availability that way as well. So this would cost 87,000 points if we wanted to fly this with Emirates. However, we could get this exact same flight for cheaper with Air Canada miles if we wanted to book it through Air Canada instead, and if there is award availability on Air Canada's website. So if we wanted to search for Newark to Athens over here, this says that prices are going to start between 66.8 thousand points, maybe 70,000 points, maybe 78.5 thousand points to fly from Newark to Athens in one-way direct business class. What you also want to do is hover over these and look for where it says EK in one of the airline codes. Because if it says EK, then that means it's going to be operated by Emirates. You want to make sure that EK is at least one of the options when you're hovering over these different flight available dates. So let's confirm that we can see this with Air Canada. Let's pick February 13, which is near Valentine's Day. It says we can get this flight for 70,000 points. So we are going to go back to aircanada.com, search for one way, book with Airplane points, searching from Newark over to Athens on February 13. And here we do see there are 3 seats left if we wanted to fly in business class from New York over to Athens on this Emirates flight. We can even filter this down to say we only want to see Emirates options, where we'll see the 78.5 thousand point option. You'll remember that Seats.aero did say we could get this flight for 70,000 points, which you can do. It's just not going to be as convenient or as glamorous because it's going to be a United flight connecting through Milan into an Aegean Airlines flight. So neither of those are on our top 10 list today. If you do want to fly Emirates, you're going to want to do this one, which costs just a little bit more, but it's still cheaper on Air Canada's website versus on Emirates' own website, where it's going to cost 87,000 points instead of 78.5. That being said, this is one of those rare instances where it might make sense to book round trip. So if we are to search for this flight using classic rewards on Emirates website from Newark to Athens, and let's say that our dates are flexible and we wanted to fly sometime in February, we can go ahead and search for those flights. And when you're booking round trip with Emirates, you might see a little bit of a discount, where here it's only going to be 54,000 miles, and then on the way back it's going to be the 87,000. And so if you take 54,000 plus 87,000, you're spending round trip 141,000 miles to fly this route if you move your points to Emirates, and every type of flexible currency, Chase, Amex, Citi, Capital One, Bilt, all of them can transfer to Emirates. Versus if you did this with Air Canada and you wanted to book 2 one-way flights, it's going to cost 78.5 thousand times 2. And that is 157,000 points, which round trip would cost more than if you just book this with Emirates, where you could pay 141,000 miles. So why would anybody do this in 2 one-way pieces instead of round trip? A lot of times people won't fly in to the same airport that they're flying out of. So let's say that you wanted to take a European trip where maybe you are flying into Greece, but you want to fly back from somewhere else. Like you're crossing from Greece to France later in your trip and you're flying back from France. That's when it would make sense to do one-way bookings, and it would make more sense to book the one-way through Air Canada. But if you are doing this round trip, it can make more sense to book with Emirates, where you'll get that round trip discount. Are you enjoying these types of tutorials? If yes, please let me know. Click that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for even more points and miles tips each week. We release a weekly video with these types of step-by-step tutorials. Also, we have a podcast where I interview points enthusiasts with different strategies every week. We only had one US airline make the list for best business class flights. Which one do you think it is? United Polaris, American Airlines, Delta, JetBlue Mint? If you guessed Delta, you're correct. Here's how to fly Delta One suites for much less than what Delta charges on its own website. Coming in at number 4 for best business class products is the Delta One suites. This is the only US airline that made it onto the list. So how would we book this particular route? Delta One suites can actually be a little bit tricky to find, especially if you want to fly them internationally. What I like to do is go to seats.aero, hover over tools, and go to the Delta One finder. And the sweet spot for here is you can actually fly Delta One back and forth between Europe. It's going to be 50,000 points per person one way in business class. I would search for 50,000 points. And since this is a tough route to find, we only have one availability as we're searching today. It's going to be from Munich over to Detroit for 50,000 points. And the way to do this is to search on Virgin Atlantic. So what we're going to do is go to virginatlantic.com, search for Munich over to Detroit one way for the date that we found on seats.aero. In this case, it's going to be August 11 for one passenger. Make sure that when you're on Virgin Atlantic site, you always click on advanced search so that you can select you want to search for points and show fares for upper class, which should get us Delta One. And here we do see that it's available for 50,000 points plus 257 euro in taxes and fees. So if we click continue just to verify that this is the aircraft that we want, this is going to be operated by Delta Airlines. And if we click on details, then Virgin Atlantic will confirm it's a Delta One seat. This is only going to cost 50,000 points if we're booking it through Virgin Atlantic. Let's see how much Delta would charge for the exact same flight. So we're going to go to Delta's website, search from Munich over to Detroit one way, August 11 for one passenger, and it's going to be in Delta One. Let's go ahead and click go. It is going to cost 375,000 points if we book this through Delta, but only 50,000 points if booked through Virgin Atlantic for the exact same flight. And keep in mind, you can transfer anything to Virgin Atlantic, Chase, Amex, Citi, Capital One, or Bilt. While the actual airplane and seat is a huge factor in determining best business class flights, don't forget about the soft product. This includes the customer service experience, catering, amenity kits, and more. And you know who shines with those? Asian Airlines. Next up, we have 2 amazing Asian airlines, plus tips on how you can book their business class flights with nearly any type of flexible points. If you're looking to earn more points so that you can fly like this, there are a couple of ways to do so. The first way is to get credit cards that earn flexible points. We're talking Chase, Amex, Citi, Capital One, or Bilt. Those points can transfer to a lot of places, and you won't be stuck with one airline. And if you're not sure what card to get, we do offer free credit card consultations at geobreezetravel.com/consultations. You'll get personalized recommendations based on your particular goals, budget, and lifestyle. Or if you prefer to earn more points without opening more and more cards, I totally understand. I've compiled some of my favorite ways for you to earn more points in a free webinar called You Do Not Need 20 Cards. Sign up for the free webinar at geobreezetravel.com/webinar. Okay, here's how to find some of that elusive award space on the best planes with Singapore Airlines and ANA. Coming in at number 3 for best business class flight products is Singapore Airlines. They actually operate a variety of different business class products. There's the A380, the A350, the 777, and a few regional ones as well. Usually when people are talking about the best Singapore Airlines business class product, they mean the A380. If you want to fly Singapore Airlines business class from anywhere in the United States, most of the time it's going to be operated by the A350 or the 777. New York through Frankfurt over to Singapore was the only aircraft that was operating the business class in the A380 aircraft. They also had the very aspirational Singapore suites in the A380, but heartbreak. Unfortunately, the A380 was pulled from the New York to Frankfurt route beginning in May 15 of 2023, and it is now operated by a Boeing 777 as well. So if you want to experience Singapore Airlines first class suites or business class in the A380, you are going to have to go outside the US. You're going to have to fly between Singapore and either Frankfurt or Hong Kong, London, Mumbai, or Sydney, Australia. For today's purposes, let's say that you don't want to do any of that and you're just saying Singapore Airlines business class sounds great, even if it's in the A350 or the 777. So we're going to go over how to find award availability with any of these other routes in Singapore business class if you want to fly directly from the United States to somewhere else. So you could find this by searching directly on Singapore Airlines website, which is going to have pretty good availability. But once again, you can actually find these seats for much cheaper if you're willing to book through Air Canada instead. So once again, I am on seats.aero. We're going to click on Explore, go through Air Canada, and we are going to search from North America over to Asia with extended availability. And we're going to see what's available for flying into Singapore 2024. We're going to sort by business class to find the lowest business class prices. And as we hover over the different prices, we want to make sure that the airport code SQ is showing up. That's how we know that it's going to be operated by Singapore Airlines. Because with some of these, as you can see, if it only says AC or something like that, then you know it's just Air Canada. So let's pick an airport that we haven't covered yet today. Let's say that we want to do this route from Houston. We have a variety of different dates where we can fly from Houston over to Singapore in business class with Singapore Airlines for 87.5 thousand points. Let's confirm that we can find this on Air Canada. So let's pick this one on July 17. I went ahead and searched on Air Canada for Houston to Singapore on July 17, and we can see that we do have this option to fly direct from Houston over to Singapore, direct with Singapore Airlines. There are 2 seats left at this price of 87.5 thousand points plus 75 Canadian dollars in taxes and fees. That is not a bad redemption at all, considering that this is like a 23-hour flight to get from Houston over to Singapore. If you are having trouble finding award space on Air Canada, you will have better luck if you are searching directly through Singapore Airlines' own website, where you can go to singaporeair.com, click on redeem flights, search for the route you want. So in this case, it's going to be from Houston over to Singapore. And we were searching on July 17 in business class for one adult. So there is saver space with Singapore Airlines website. If there's not saver space, this would cost 143,000 points. With saver space, this costs 111.5 thousand points. Nearly everything transfers over to Singapore. You can move Chase points, Amex points, Capital One points, or Citi points in order to book this. So this is going to go from Houston through Manchester over to Singapore in business class for 111.5 thousand points. That is not bad considering it's a 23-hour flight, but you can get that for a pretty good discount just by booking through Air Canada instead. Coming in at the number 2 best business class product in the world is going to be ANA's The Room, which is on its 777 cabin. There are not a lot of routes where you can find this. So the routes that you're going to want to fly are either Haneda to London, Haneda to JFK, or Haneda to San Francisco. You could book this directly through ANA's own website, where you do need to book round trip if you want to do that. If you are searching one way at a time, you can often have a lot better luck with securing availability, because finding availability for one way on this is tough. Finding availability for both ways is even tougher. Since ANA will not let you book one way on its own website, here are a couple other ways to find it. ANA is part of the Star Alliance, so I would search seats.aero for Air Canada once again. We're going to search from North America over to Asia for flights to and from Haneda. Sort by business class lowest, and you're going to see some different options. If we wanted to search for SFO over to Haneda, there are only a few dates where this is available, and we want to make sure to scroll over the business class section and see if it says NH as the airline code. Here it only has UA, which means this is only a United thing. This one has NH and UA, which means this has ANA and United flights. This one should have both. This one is United only, and this one will have ANA. So let's try one of these. Let's try August 9, which should have ANA and United availability from San Francisco over to Haneda on Air Canada. So if we go to Air Canada's website and type in that route, San Francisco over to Haneda, we do see that this is an available route to be booked with business class on Air Canada for 75,000 points, but it's only available on United Airlines. It looks like they're already sold out of that business class availability on ANA. We could try the same thing if we wanted to fly from JFK instead, where it says there's availability on 10/24. 2023, let's see if we have any luck with that. And here we do see that there is one seat left where you can book from New York over to Tokyo on All Nippon Airways for 75,000 points in business class plus 75 Canadian dollars. If we want to view the details, we do confirm that this is on the 777, which is the model of plane that we would like to fly in order to get ANA the room. As you saw, there are not a lot of available seats if you are just looking for JFK or San Francisco. I'm actually seeing a lot more if you are willing to position to either Hawaii or Seattle. So for example, let's look at this example of Seattle to Haneda on August 2022. It should actually be cheaper. It's only going to be 55,000 points in business class instead of the 75,000 that we were seeing with the New York example. So we would go back to Air Canada, modify this, and search from Seattle to Tokyo on August 22. Click find. And we do see a flight from Seattle to Tokyo. There are 4 seats available on ANA business class for only 55,000 points per person plus 75 Canadian dollars. I would say that is still a steal, even though it is not the room or like the nicest of the ANA business class. It's still ANA business class, which I hear is going to be fantastic all around. And if you want to sweeten the deal even more, I would search for the availability on Air Canada this way, but then you can actually get this for even cheaper if you call into Virgin Atlantic to book the ANA flight. If you are flying between Japan and the Western United States, for business class, it would be 90,000 round trip, and you can also use Virgin Atlantic to book one-way ANA flights for half this price. That means it would only be 45,000 points if you were to fly between Seattle and Haneda, or if you were to find something between San Francisco and Haneda, then it's only 45,000 points for that business class flight. If you wanted to fly between the Eastern United States, so for example, that JFK option, over to Japan, then it's only going to cost 47.5 thousand points transferred over to Virgin Atlantic instead of the 75,000 points that we saw through Air Canada. You're not going to be able to find this on Virgin Atlantic's website, so what I would do is search for the flight availability on Air Canada like I just showed you, and then what you're going to do is call this phone number. I got this from a 1 Mile at a Time article. The phone number is 800-365-9500. That is the Virgin Atlantic Flying Club number. Verify with them that they see the award availability as well and that you're allowed to book it for 45,000 or 47.5 thousand points for the ANA flight of your choice. And then once they confirm that that availability is good to go on their system as well, you can transfer points over to Virgin Atlantic and get it booked that way.
Can flying in business class get any better than that?
According to the points community, yes, there is one business class product that tops them all. It's often referred to as first class experiences in business class, and it's more affordable than you would guess if you know how to use your points. If you're looking for even more next level ways to make the most out of your points, we do have a couple of options for you. The first is through the GeoBreeze Travel Patreon, which you can access through patreon.com/geobreezetravel. Through the Patreon, you can get personalized step-by-step tutorials based on the exact routes that you want to see. We also host a live group coaching session each month. You can ask any questions that you have about points, travel, or anything else in the open forum. We also have a lot of people who join the $5 level just to say thank you for the free content, and I am all here for that. Thank you, I appreciate it so much. The second option is for business owners or individuals who spend more than $100,000 a year on expenses. If that's you, we would love to chat with you about our points portfolio management offer. I don't know if you know, but you can get some incredible luxury travel with that level of spend. Book a free intro chat with us at geobreezetravel.com/intro call to learn more. All right, here's the play for how to score seats on Qatar Airways Q Suites, the best business class product in the world. And the number one best business class product in the world is Qatar Airways Q Suites, in case you didn't see that coming. And the best way to find availability with that airline is to go to seats.aero, click on Tools, and then go to Qatar Q Suites Finder. But oh no, it appears that Qatar recently removed nearly all business class availability between the US and Doha via American Airlines, which is the preferred way to find Q Suites availability, because then you can fly for only about 70,000 points between the US and Doha. And that was also going to include positioning flights. Like, I booked this a long time ago. I'm going to be flying Las Vegas through Los Angeles through Doha over to Egypt. Could have also done the Maldives, 70,000 points total. A lot of that, like 16 hours of that flight, is going to be in Qatar Q Suites. But that is not available anymore. So there are a couple of other things that we can do. If we search on American Airlines, you won't be able to get from the US over to Doha, but you can get from either Europe or other places in Asia or Oceania over to Doha. What I would recommend, if you wanted to really maximize the amount of time that you get in business class, if you can fly from Australia over to Doha in Qatar Airways Q Suites, you are going to get a lot of flight time in the best business class product in the sky for not too many points. So for example here, there's quite a few different options between either Perth or Adelaide or even Auckland, New Zealand over to Doha for 80,000 points. Let's say that we wanted to book this flight from Adelaide over to Doha, and you want to scroll over the available points here where it'll show you the airport code. You're looking for QR if you want to fly Qatar. So most of these are going to be operated by Qatar anyway, but let's go to the American Airlines website and search for Adelaide to Doha. So we'll go to American Airlines, search one way, we're redeeming with points, Adelaide over to Doha, and that date was the 28th of September. Here there's one seat left for 80,000 points plus $70 in taxes and fees. It is operated by Qatar Airways, and it's 13 and a half hours nonstop in Qatar Airways business class, which is a great deal. Since they are not showing much availability between the US and Qatar in Q Suites, Qatar Airways recently did become a transfer partner with American Express, so you could move points over there. You need to make a login in order to search for any availability. I was searching around and I found this flight from JFK over to Doha. It costs twice that to fly one way, by the way. This is just a one-way flight from New York to Doha. I searched as far out as I could in the calendar for next July for just one adult, and it's 140,000 points, which is a bit steep for me in business class. I don't think that I would be willing to spend that much for this flight. So if you can instead reposition to somewhere else in Europe or Asia or Australia, New Zealand, in order to experience Qatar Q Suites, that might be the easiest way to do this for now. I hope you found those tutorials useful. Viewer requests on future topics are always welcome, so please let us know in the comments if there are any topics that you would like for us to do a deep dive on. In the meantime, if you like these types of tutorials, check out this video next.